Hey everybody, on the podcast today, rock royalty photographer Mark Weiss. This guy has shot everybody from 1977, shooting Kiss's first appearance at Madison Square Garden. Led Zeppelin playing Madison Square Garden again, 1977. That picture hangs on my living room wall. Motley Crue, Van Halen in 1979, Aerosmith, Ted Nugent, Ozzy Osbourne. This guy has done it all, been there, and has some amazing stories to talk about today, including his introductory bite from Motley Crue. Want the reward? Do the damn work. Challenge yourself. Inspire change. Choice, not luck. Hey everybody, Todd Crandell, the original sober triathlete, bringing you another Racing for Recovery podcast, and I am excited for this one. I have my good friend and iconic, and I use that word iconic because he is, Mark Weiss with me today. Mark, how are you?
I'm doing really good. Thanks for asking me, Todd.
It's good to see you, man. It's really good to see you. Again, I'm excited for this. So I want to start by this question to get us rolling today. How did you take an opportunity that was presented to you and turn it into not only your life's work, but your work that has benefited 1,000 people like myself? How did you do that?
It just came about. Each day you wake up and you don't know what faces you. And one day I was 12 years old. I was mowing lawns for $5 a cut, and I knocked on this one guy's door and I said, "You want your lawn mowed?" And he said, "No, I do it myself." And I said, with a smirk, I said, "Well, it doesn't look that way." And he kind of smirked back at me and like, look at this smart ass. And he went back, he left, and he came back. I thought he was going to slam the door in my face, but he came back with this camera. And I said, "I'll tell you what, kid, I'll give you this camera, this Canon, Bell & Howell Canon camera, if you mow my lawn for this season. I'll give it to you after you cut a few times." And I'm thinking, I could probably hawk that for $100, So that was my plan. And I started mowing the lawn, maybe 4 weeks in, he said, "All right, you earned it, finish the season, but, here's the camera." And I was thinking, all right, now I'm going to, go to the pawn shop down the street and, try to get $100 for it. And I made out. And so little did I know, a little bit of twist of fate came the following week. Before I ended up going to the pawn shop, I was riding my dirt bike at a Suzuki 50. I was meeting my friend Glenn at the dirt trails, a little bit by my house. And we kind of met, but we met head on, collision. And we just got thrown off the bikes. He was hysterical. So what I hear, I was knocked unconscious. My brother found me like 10 minutes later, and he went and took my foot out of the pedal. The shifter was stuck, and I was lifeless. He's his little brother, who's 2 years older than me.
Oh.
So he left me there with my friend Glenn, and he took off and got help. And the ambulance came, and I woke up a few days later, and I didn't even know what happened. All I remember is my father telling me not to leave the house to watch the guys working on the house, and that's what I remember. And I woke up, and so they told me also all this that I'm telling you is like, these are just memories from my brother and my friend Glenn. Long story short, I was in the hospital for a month. Had a fractured cheekbone. I was, had a concussion, obviously, and I just kind of rested the rest of the summer in my bedroom in New Jersey, looking at this camera on my shelf because I couldn't move and get up. So I'm just looking at that, thinking I was going to pawn it. And then I asked my brother to hand it to me, and he gave it to me, and I had it in my hand. It's actually right over there. He said, or I said, I started just playing around with it, and I was just got to get interested. I was bored to death in that room, you know. I was cranking the shutter. I was, turning it a little bit, try to figure out how to open up the back. And, I kind of, fell in love with this little piece of metal. And I was like, I'm not hawking it. I'm going to see what I can do with it. And at the time, Carl Sandburg Middle School in New Jersey, there was a photography program I knew of. So I went in there. It was just about to go into high school, but I knew the teacher there. I never took a photography class, but we always passed it. And I just popped in there with a camera and I said, "Can you teach me how to teach me how to do this? Look what I got from mowing the lawn." And he just said, "Sure." And he took me in the dark room, this cylinder, it was kind of like Star Trek. You go in this dark room where there's a round cylinder and you go in and you have to close it. So you're in this dark room while you're spinning around in this thing. And then you go into the other side so the light doesn't go in. And you go in and then there's these lights and there's this red glow. And then there's someone in there developing prints. So I'm watching, 12-year-old kid. And these white pieces of paper are going in this solution, and before your eyes it becomes an image, so for me, not knowing it, it's like, wow, that's how it's done. So that's kind of where it got my interest.
Wow, this is going to be great. So I'm going to hold up a first of many pictures for you, and we're going to come back to that story in a second. So you taking that opportunity and everything you just shared, this is what it's done for me. And I'm going to show you this picture. You can see that right there. That's you taking a picture of me in Times Square, releasing the picture book of my 100 Ironmans at the time. So I'm going to start or do more of the show with this. Tell me about what you think of you taking that picture, and I'm going to segue that back into more of your story. But before you answer that, Mark, I want to explain to the viewers how, I don't even know what the word is for me, how incredible that moment was for me, how almost surreal it was, because a lot of your images that we're going to talk about, they were on my bedroom wall as a kid. So here I am, as you're taking my picture, in a pretty big moment for me in Racing for Recovery. I'm thinking, oh my God, man, this dude's pictures have been on my walls forever. So again, I'd like to get back and just have you explain to the viewers how you felt about taking that picture of me at that time.
Let's go back a little bit in time and just give the audience how we met and how it led us to this, because I don't remember. All I remember is seeing you at maybe a concert, and you tell me. I don't even remember.
Well, okay, so we'll even go further back. I contacted you because we're talking about opportunity, and I do that with the people that come to Racing for Recovery every day. And I remember I'm sitting in my house, and I have a lot of your pictures up on the wall, and this was a few years ago, 2 or 3 years ago. And I've always been one that takes opportunity and creates a reality or a dream that I wanted. And I'm looking at your pictures, and I'm like, you know what? I'm going to contact this dude and see if he'll have an interest in taking pictures of me sometime, because I do a number of photo shoots, and I'm like, I want this guy to take pictures of me. So I reached out, and I believe your assistant answered, and I said, here I am. I'd like Mark to do some of this stuff. You contacted me, and we officially met when you came out to Toledo and you came to the Racing for Recovery building. We had a Van Halen tribute band playing here. And I brought you out, you took some pictures, including the cover of my picture book, and that's how we officially met, that then led to the photograph in Times Square.
I'm going to go back a little bit. The reason why I should have remembered that, but because of my motorcycle accident, it did something to my brain. And I didn't realize that until really maybe I put 2 and 2 together maybe 20 years ago. Because I just noticed, after that, I started doing bad in school. I had to do a little cheat sheet because I couldn't remember things. And so I have a short-term memory. I don't remember people, places, things, even today. So That's why photography is kind of a blessing for me. It kind of helps me remember. Or if it doesn't help me remember, I know I did it because I shot it. And I know I shot it because my name's on it and it's in my file in my garage. But those memories, I don't. So thanks for sharing that. I thought we met at a concert. I didn't know you. I mean, it's coming back a little bit. And the more, like, I might even ask you this again when I see you, because the more you tell me that story, the more it goes in my brain and the more I will hopefully remember it. If I let too much time go by, then it becomes a memory that I can't, it doesn't come out. So, one of the things that unfortunately that accident did that to my memory, and that's why photography is so important to me. But now it is coming back that you did call in those circumstances. I mean, it's not that bad where, you know, but
Yeah.
again,
Well, sorry, Mark, and I appreciate you sharing that with me because now I'm learning even more about you that I didn't know. And you are right because we had met at a couple of concerts. We went to see Motley Crue in Atlantic City together. So we've done that
that
as
was
well. But
that was after,
I
but that was
appreciate
after
learning
we
that
did
more.
that whole photo shoot and the whole deal, right?
That's true. You're correcting
Right.
my memory on that. That's
Well,
true.
we became
Yeah.
fast friends. I
Yeah.
stayed at your house, and we did
Yeah.
the photo shoot, and I shot you like a rock star, and like I would have shot Motley Crue. I mean, that's what we did. The lighting in the basement. I mean, I love shoot like anytime. I
Yeah.
mean, I can't help it. I mean, I think that's what you wanted, but I just can't help. That's how I
Yeah.
shoot. I want people to look as best as they can. That's my job. I want them to have I know how to angle them. I know how to light. Not much of a technical guy. It's just like, all right, does that look good? No, maybe if I move the lighting here, because everyone's face is different. You can't put the same light on one person where it's going to look good, guaranteed to look good on someone else. So I'm always changing. I'm always changing, like
Well, you
the way I shoot, the way I light on the person.
Well, you definitely did that for me, and even the picture that I just held up a while ago. It's like I never would have posed in that pose like that, and you've brought some interesting poses out of me that have led to some cool pictures, and I'm sure we're going to add them to the podcast as we go. But so let's get into your story. You talked about you started using the camera and everything. Tell everybody the story you've told a million times. I apologize for asking it again, but it's so awesome about your being at Madison Square Garden and the whole deal. Let everybody
Okay,
know
well,
what's
I'll
happening.
do a fast forward to that to give your audience to see how I got there. So I started developing pictures for about a year. I got bored of shooting, my brother and my dog and my friends and birthday events. Put the camera down. Went to high school. Of course, you're interested in girls and other things. And then in 1974, my brother took me to Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young at Roosevelt Stadium in Jersey City. 100,000 people there. I mean, it was amazing. It was kind of like a Woodstock moment almost. Only 5 years after Woodstock, and on that day, there was this guy named Kenny Reff who was friends with he was a son of my parents' friends that we used to go there on holidays. And he wasn't a friend, but we knew each other and we'd hang out. I was a little younger, and I saw him there with a couple hot girls, and he had a camera around his neck, and we just bumped into him out of these 100,000 people. And I said, "Hey, Kenny," and he said, "Where are you going?" He said, "I'm going to the front to take pictures." I'm like, "Oh, cool." And I watched him go to into the sea of people, and when I couldn't see him anymore, I kept looking at him with the two girls, So 2 months later, we were at Labor Day at the parents' house, and Kenny was there, and he had all these pictures hanging up from that concert. And I was like, "Whoa, that's cool. You took those?" And he goes, "Yeah." And so that's how I kind of got enamored with photography, of rock photography. I'm like, "Hey, how did you get your camera in? How'd you do it?" And so he told me some tricks, how to sneak it in. And I went in 1974, like actually a month later, Elton John was playing at the Garden, and me and my friend Frank it was Thanksgiving. We skipped out of, we kind of met each other after Thanksgiving dinner. We each told the other one we were going to the other one's house. So our parents didn't think we were going to New York City, hopping on a train and seeing Elton John. But we did that. I brought my camera in, I snuck it in, and we had some okay seats, and I took some pictures, but I had one roll of film, and I ran out of film like after the first song. I was so excited. And on the encore, John Lennon came out. It was his last public appearance, actually. And I didn't have any film, what am I going to do? But that was my first picture I ever, and then I was like, okay, next time I got to be prepared, and have more film and get a longer lens. I thought I needed to have a longer lens. And then a year goes by, Peter Frampton played, and then Aerosmith and all these other bands. So when Peter Frampton played, I took pictures and I got really close. I snuck in. I used to buy my way into the concerts. I used to take my fry boots, put my lens down my boot, put the body down with a strap hanging down on my, over my sweatshirt. Got it in. Paid the security guard off with the guy that ripped the tickets. Gave him like $3-4. Got in. Then I have to get down. So then once the lights go down, I would kind of position myself to jump over the barricade onto the orchestra seat and then maneuver. I mean, this took more than a few times to perfect, but it was perfected. By the time I shot Led Zeppelin in 77, it was perfected. By the time I shot Kiss in 70. So I would jump over and then, I get, bounced out if I didn't have a ticket because I would say, oh, it's here. And, no, it's not, get out. So I figured out a way to get rid of the usher where when everyone was standing, I would dismantle the chairs because they were stuck together, and I would have everyone push it over so the security guard couldn't get to my little spot in the middle that was in the aisle. So I had a protected spot now, and everyone was happy because there's no ushers hassling. So then I shot the whole I was able to shoot the whole show from this spot. So that's kind of was my technique. Anyway, February of 77, Kiss played for the first time at Madison Square Garden. Snuck my camera in. Took pictures. Got some great photos of Ace with a smoking guitar. I was getting bounced around, so I don't have tons of photos from it, but I have this one great photo of Ace, great shot of Gene. I have a handful of really good ones that I still have in my galleries around the country that I sell for not $1 a piece, because what I did was I would sell them for $1 a piece outside the concert, maybe the next time they would play. So they played in December the same year. They played 3 nights sold out, made a bunch of pictures. And by the way, to go back a little bit, I used to sell them out of my high school locker and have a sign on my locker, and the teachers were cool with it, come to, room 208, at this time and get your Kiss pictures or Frampton pictures. And it was a trip because I was really shy, back then. I was very shy for a reason which we can discuss later about my brother's mental health. But I was very shy, introverted. But once I had these pictures of Peter Frampton and I would show my friends in school, next thing you know, there's like 6 girls around me talking to me about Peter Frampton and how was the show, and oh shit, wow, that's a cool T-shirt you got on, and next thing you know, I'm on dates left and right, and I'm starting to get into the clique of these hot girls and cool people, who like the same music that I like, because I just didn't do it. I didn't do it to bands I didn't like. Like I didn't shoot Billy Joel. I didn't shoot bands like pop bands. I like Aerosmith, Zeppelin, all the cool stuff. But also Jethro Tull, Emerson, Lake and Palmer. There was Electric Light Orchestra. Bad Company. So all those bands played at the Garden, and I would sneak in. But anyway, going back to the Kiss story, in February, I went in there and I sold my pictures, and I got arrested for selling my pictures for in front of the Garden. Kiss, we'd always have to run around and get from the cops, but Kiss had like a whole force of people because obviously, they were protective of their image, and I was a bootlegger, technically with the shirt sellers. So I went into jail, into the paddy wagon with all the shirt sellers, and they all had their shirts, and I had my 8x10 photos, And the guy behind the desk said, he put me in the jail cell with him overnight. And then in the morning, he's like, if you want your pictures back, you're going to have to appear before the judge. I said, take the pictures, just don't tell my parents. And that was it. So then the next day, I was like, now what am I going to do? I'm looking at my photos, and I'm like, these are just as good as this magazine, the Circus magazine that I had a subscription to. I'm like, they're just as good as theirs. So I looked at the address, and it was New York, like maybe a few miles from where the garden is. Hopped on the same train, got on a subway with my makeshift portfolio that I, threw together. And I just knocked on the door, and the secretary took a liking to me and said, we had a nice chat, and I told her what happened, and she was amused by it. And she said, wait till Al's off deadline. The art director's name was Al Rudolph. And so I waited maybe 3 hours. And meanwhile, she was flirting with me. I was flirting with her. I was having a good time hanging out in Circus, seeing all these people walking around, being very professional. Like, it's the first time I was really in an office, in New York City on the penthouse. So I was like flustered. I'll wait a week there, but they took me in at the end of the day, and he looked at my photos. He's like, Mark, I like your work. I like your eye and how you're seeing things. But you need to shoot Kodachrome film. Like, you need to shoot, because I was shooting Ektachrome, which was available light. At that time, Circus only wanted photographers that shot with a flash, and that kind of kills the vibe, So, and I didn't shoot with flash because, first of all, I'm sneaking my camera in, all of a sudden a flash goes off, and it's not becoming of the artist. But they wanted that for that crisp thing. That was their thing. Jerry Rothberg, who was the publisher. So I was like, all right, if I got to do what I got to do, I'll shoot with flash. And fast forward 6 months, when Aerosmith played Giant Stadium with Ted Nugent, Mahogany Rush, and Journey, I think it was. I stuck my camera in, like stayed over like night to sleep out because we had GA tickets, so we're right in front. Stuck my camera in, and it was daylight. Aerosmith played in daylight, so I didn't need a flash. So I was able to use the Kodachrome film and get photos. So about a week later, this girl calls up, Marianne, the secretary, says, do you have any pictures of Aerosmith? Because no one really was able to shoot them. They were in their dark days, and they weren't letting photographers shoot. So lucky for me, I happened to be there in the right place and had the pictures, dropped them off. 2 months later, kind of forgot about it. 2 months later, Marianne calls me up. She goes, I was in New York at a payphone. She goes, go to the newsstand, check it out. I'm like, oh, wow, maybe I have a picture in the magazine, So Beatles were on the cover, 1978 October issue. And I'm turning the pages, and all of a sudden I see the centerfold. It looked familiar, and it was Steven Tyler with my name on the bottom of it. And then the ball started rolling from there. Ted Nugent came, all that. Their management company saw these photos that were appearing in the magazine, and they were big magazines, And then I got contacted by Lieber Krebs not too long after, who was managing everybody. And then I became a staff photographer within a year, shooting Van Halen in '79 the following year, and backstage with Eddie. First time I shot Eddie was backstage at Convention Hall, and it just snowballed, and I just took opportunity and never said no.
Wow, I love this. And I know every time I get around you, I'm like, oh, tell me something more. So let's stick with Kiss for a second. I'm trying to put this into order here, but I can't. So you talked about Kiss, their first time at Madison Square Garden. That's where your whole story starts. What was it like then for you to be at their last show? Because I was there as well. I know you were there because we met that time. What was it like then, all these years later, to be invited and come back on a whole other professional level and shoot their final show at Madison Square Garden?
It was totally a full circle moment, obviously. I shot their first show at the Garden, and I shot their last show not only at the Garden, but period, in makeup,
Period.
on tour. I'll tell you why Kiss means so much to me because, believe it or not, if it wasn't for Kiss, I wouldn't have grandchildren. I wouldn't have these children that I have now. And I'll tell you why, because it sounds a little weird. When I was getting arrested for Kiss, my soon-to-be wife, Susan Farrell, was working for Bill Aucoin at the Kiss office the same year that I got arrested. She was a year older than me, so she was like 18. I was 17. And we met when I got asked to show my portfolio to Bill Aucoin at where in New York City for a Billy Idol photo shoot. I had the meeting, I got the shoot, go on the elevator, and there's Susan meeting for the first time. She knew I got off. She was working in the building with the Khashoggis as a personal assistant at the time, and she knew I got on the office of Bill Aucoin that she used to work at. So she's like, and I was in leather, I look cool, you know. She's like, what band are you in? And I said, no, I'm a photographer. And we started talking as we're going down the elevator. And then as we left the elevator, I told her my studio's on 33rd Street by the Garden. And she's like, oh, I'm going to the library. And so we started, which is on the way to my studio. So we started walking and getting to know each other and all that. So as we dropped her at the library, it was closed. And she's like, oh, I think I'll go to Macy's, which is a block from my studio. Kept walking, got to know each other. And I said, well, all right. She dropped her at Macy's. I said, well, you want to have dinner? And that night we had dinner. And next thing you know it, you know, we're living together and we're engaged and had kids and grandkids and the whole deal.
Well, amazing. I did not know that story. That is great. Again, I'm learning more and more about you. I want to stick with family for a second, and then we have to come back to I got to ask you about shooting Led Zeppelin at the Garden, because that picture is up on my,
also,
my wall at home.
You talked about I do want to finish the Kiss thing.
Go ahead.
Why it meant so much
go
to me.
ahead.
So I get arrested. I start shooting them for Circus in 80, you know, that one tour with Eric. And then in 83, when they took their makeup off, I did the photo shoot at my studio where I live 2 blocks from where I got arrested. So the band, it's one of their first photo shoots without makeup. And then the first time I met them, and next thing you know it, I'm their photographer. They liked me, and I started doing pictures at rehearsals, and then they hired me for doing their tour books. You know, up until, you know, whenever, you know, I did a lot of their work. So It was totally full circle for me.
I love this. And again, part of the Racing for Recovery message, you know, our slogan is with sobriety, anything is possible. And I'm not turning this into a sober podcast. That's not the time. But I am saying, look what you can do. And we started off talking about opportunity. And I've utilized the opportunity of meeting you to have it help me doing a variety of things that I'm doing and stuff. So I just love the energy of what we're talking about today. So let's skip back to family for a second. And I want to talk to you or ask you about your brother. You brought him up. I know it's a personal, sensitive subject, but it's relative to your story. Can you talk about your brother a little bit and the impact that's had on you?
Yeah, I mean,
I
recently kind of figured it out, you know, because, you know, you go through life and you don't know why you are who you are. And especially with me, I don't remember my like before that accident, I don't remember anything before that. At the time, I'm sure I did, but as years went on, my earliest memory is that accident. And I was always envious of people that can remember when they're 8, 9, 10, but mine was that accident, unfortunately. So my brother went through some things. He's witnessed the accident. Obviously, that was trauma to him. My father had a couple heart attacks. That was trauma to him. He was like 16 and when all this stuff happened. So that 15, 16, where it really sinks in. He was being picked on and bullied a little bit and started messing around with drugs. He might have did some bad acid, or I don't really know. And, you know, he never told me that, but something happened to his brain with all these variables, and he started like not being in the real world, and he was soon to be diagnosed as a paranoid schizophrenic. And he was, a lot of family fights. My brother, and he would dress up like this alter ego and go on the bus, and I'd be in there and brought the dog on, so I'd be a little bit embarrassed, but I had to stand by my brother and help him. So that was going on, when I started going to high school. I was 14, 15 during this whole thing. And then he eventually, had a nervous breakdown at 17. I think it was 17 or 18. And then everything kind of changed. It's like all the attention went to my brother. I didn't want to bother my parents because I was okay. I was having fun shooting bands, and I had girlfriends. And Jay was kind of a mess. He was, we'd be sitting in the room, we'd be looking out the window. I said, "Why don't you come out?" He goes, "No, they're talking to me. They're calling me and some names." And I'm like, "No, they're not. First of all, you can't hear them. It's not possible. They're all the way down the block." And then he took it a step further, where we're watching TV, and he thought the news people were actually really we're watching the same thing, and I would even record it and play it back, and it's in his head that was real to him. You can't understand it because it's psychosis, and so he started getting medicated, and so that was happening. He ended up in Carrier Clinic, all these different institutions. Eventually they gave him shock treatment, and I was witnessing that. I don't know why my parents wanted me to see my brother getting shocked, and the after effects, because they're like a zombie. It's outlawed now, but in the mid 70s, that was what they did when they didn't know what to do. So that was all part of that. I was supportive of my parents to help them as much as I could, and so that went on for a couple of years, and then he ended up. I started getting in Circus, and I was I was becoming a success, and that kept my parents very happy, and the balance that they needed. So they were very proud of me and supportive. And then we just had to keep an eye on Jay, and he ended up in halfway homes, and sometimes he would be settled, then he would drink and drive and get in a car accident, or it's just always something. Until in '85, at this point, he was kind of we're just dealing with it. He was living in a halfway home, and my parents went on vacation. I was out with Ozzie in South America, and I remember coming back in the airplane, and I called up to see how everyone was, and I get this. I talked to my parents, and they said, Jay's been in a horrible fire, and he over-medicated himself. He was suicidal more than once, and he over-medicated himself because his doctor was away, and my parents were away, I was away, and he just over-medicated himself, and he fell asleep with a cigarette in his hand, and he lit the house on. It was the halfway home. The whole building went on fire. They got him out. He was badly burned. He had, burns all over, and they had to eventually amputate both his legs above his knees up until the day he died of a heart attack, 20 years later. He was living in a nursing home with older people, and he was okay there, but his skin kept breaking down. It was not a life for anyone, but he accepted it most of the time. Of course, he comes to terms with things, but it kind of kept him in a safe place for other people, because he was reckless when he had his oldest limbs. He could have hurt someone. He could have, drinking drugs, and could have killed someone. And it kept him in a place where we knew who he was. We wouldn't wish it on anybody, but maybe there's a reason why that happened, but we just took care of him until he couldn't take it anymore. But he was, I'm not gonna say he was happy at the nursing home, but he was like the king there, And I remember, I used to take him to concerts, and they say, "Oh, my brother's there. My brother Mark, he knows Bon Jovi and Brett Michaels and this one and that one." And all the nurses would be, yeah, right, sure. And, I'd go in there. I said, yeah, I know him. I'm the photographer. And they think I'm just covering for my brother, until I said, all right, we got to stop this. So one of the nurses did believe him, and they checked up on me and they saw my name, and it was a nurse that was very nice to my brother. So we took her to Bon Jovi, and she brought him backstage, and she met the band and the whole thing. So since then, he was like the king, and everyone wanted to be his friend and everything. So
Wow, that's so cool and a very difficult story. I'm going to ask you a question on that, and you had shared some of that with me privately, and I'm thankful you had the courage to share that publicly like this. My uncle was similar to your brother. He was going into medical school at Ohio State University and got into psychedelics, and he developed schizophrenia and ended up killing himself. So it's another example of the dangers of drugs. I do have a question in that. How has your brother's situation, how did it enhance your gratitude for life, gratitude for your gift of being a photographer, and your overall zest for living life fully? What are the positive things that you've taken from your brother's circumstances?
well, not to take anything for granted. It did give me some anxiety. I am a worrier. I always think the worst thing's going to happen. But I also know is you have to deal with what you have to deal with. I also realized that because he got all the attention, I needed attention. And when I got attention from my photographs, that's what did it for me. And still to this day, I mean, here I literally 50 years into when I first shot Elton John. I still, when I shoot a band, whether it could be an unknown band that looks like crap and everything, and I have to make them look good and feel good. I still get nervous before a shoot. I still want to impress them, and I still want to make sure that they like my photography. It's my job, but it's also, before it's my job, it makes me feel good. And that's probably what kept me going all these years or decades, because it's not about the business, which it is, of course. You want to live in a nice house and get cars and fun things. But it's the payoff is really making the new friends. So I always say, like, when I shot all these bands in the 80s, and there was a lot of them, I'm not shooting as much then, but it's like making 4 or 5 new friends for life, pretty much, in most of the cases. And that's why I do it, and that's why I continue doing it. And now I'm still shooting when I can. I'm shooting this new band called Max Saturn. That's an up-and-coming band that wanted me to shoot them. I'm shooting them next month. And I shot the Dictators cover from the 70s. My friend Keith Ross is the new singer. And, it's a creative venture. And Mikkel, my girlfriend, is a creative director, and we work together on the album cover. So it's just working with a group of people. It's like, being in a band, and we're like part of it. So I'm keep doing that. I'm also working right now with an amazing group of people, and one in particular, guy's name is Jack, over at the Grammy Museum in Mississippi, where they're going to be making an announcement. Probably by the time this airs, it will be announced, where they're doing a exhibition on, it's called the 80s, the wildest decade, or something like that, the wildest decade. And how I got to know them is because of my manhole cover with Twisted Sister. I kind of loaned to the Hard Rock about 5 years ago, and it was waiting to be in the Vegas Hard Rock when they rebuilt it. So until then, it was just sitting in storage. And they got a call from the Grammy Museum, and they said, do you have any Hard Rock 80s kind of, hair band kind of memorabilia? And they said, well, we got this manhole cover. It's been sitting here. And it was the cover shoot. It was a big heavy metal thing. It says TS on it, from Come Out and Play, where D comes out of it. I art directed that, and I did all the photos from 1985, 40 years ago. And so they put me in touch with Jack, and me and Jack's been talking almost every day. I ended up kind of being curator, helping them with some of the copy, that, making sure things are, where they should be. So they respect my opinion, and we're kind of collaborating on that. And so I would say 98% of the photographs around this big museum exhibition with, like, I think it's Tommy Lee's motorcycle, he got his drum set, Fred Curry's drum set, Peter Criss's gong. I'm going to show my Slippery When Wet t-shirt that I have. Lita Ford stuff, Ozzy's outfit. So any photo that's in there, any artifact, I'm going to match up with one of my photos. And then they're giving me a wall to exhibit my photographs, like maybe 16 of my photographs, with a monitor where, I can, have a, where they talk, have like a little promo kind of, talking, have my photos going. So that's going to happen. And it's just something that, an opportunity that came over just a manhole that I shot 40 years ago that I happened to keep. And because of that, this is my biggest event that's going to be happening. And the event's going to be up for 2 years. It's in a building. It's in Cleveland, Mississippi. And I'm going to be at the opening with someone that's pretty iconic that's going to be there with me on the opening. It's like a VIP, sponsor only kind of event. And then I believe the next day I'm going to be doing a workshop. They asked me if I wanted to get involved with helping some kids out and creating things. So we're talking about that. So it's kind of like my new home for 2 years. It's a little far from me, I'm actually, Mikkel and I are driving out there next week because I have my artifacts. I'm bringing my camera, my first camera that I talked about. That's going to be in a display case. My portfolio is going to be there. I might even drag my mannequin I have in the corner there that I show with my Circus jacket. We might put him up with my camera dangling. So they're giving me a nice little space. So I'm really looking forward to that. And you'll definitely be hearing about it because it's going to be announced, I think, next week. Or yeah.
Awesome. This is so cool. You had talked about this at my house before, of like, you were just starting to get this project going, and it's so awesome to see it come to fruition. And again, we're talking about opportunity, we're talking about perseverance, about staying true to one's craft, and there's yet another example of that. So let's get into story time for a while, and I want to give the listeners a heads up. We're going to conclude with some Ozzy stuff that then you're going to talk about some other things that you wanted to hold off on. But please go back to that first Led Zeppelin show at the Garden. I think you said it was 1977, and what it was like to actually shoot that one and have some of those amazing photos from that.
I mean, Led Zeppelin still to this day, I can put on any album and listen to it from the beginning to the end, and you don't have to skip. It's just amazing how it just flows, and what they did was created like timeless music. And that was one of the bands I wanted to see. And I snuck my camera in the first night. They were playing like 6 nights at the Garden. Now, that was in June. I was graduating high school one of those days. I didn't go to the show for that one, but I went, there was like a prom. I didn't go to the prom. I went to see Zeppelin. I went to the parties after, there was a whole bunch of events, but I was make sure I was at the Garden to shoot those shows. And I was thinking the first night I got all those really cool shots, and then I sold them for each night. But I was just more of a fan for that one. I mean, I was a fan for all of them, but the Led Zeppelin, when Jimmy came out with, they had the pyramid lasers, which was really ahead of its time. When he did the bow, just an amazing show, and something that will kind of be embedded in my brain. That one, I do remember that one.
How could you forget that one? I wish I could have seen them. My uncles were supposed to take me to see them up at the Pontiac Silverdome in Detroit, and of course everybody knows that John Bonham, passed from drinking too much. So let's not forget that message. So I never got to see him. So again, living through you, I always enjoy this stuff. Let's talk about one of my favorite bands, and a band that's influenced me greatly. Give us some Motley Crue stuff. How'd you get hooked up with them? What was that like? Give us some of
Okay,
that.
so I'm an established photographer by 1982. I still haven't done album covers, but I already did a cover on Circus, a few covers on Circus magazine, like with Ozzy when he the Pink Tutu and Richie Blackmore, and a bunch of things. Even a Robert Plant shot when he won Best Vocalist with Pat Benatar, where they used one of my photos of Pat to go with a Robert Plant photo. So my name was pretty dominant in Circus, and bands knew it because they read photo credits and they're like, "Oh, I want to be in that magazine one day." Well, Mark Weiss, maybe he'll shoot us. I'm sure they're thinking that. And I found out later that they were. So I was working with this guy. I was working for some men's magazines it was called Sherry at the time, and I was going around taking pictures with. They had a mascot called Cherry Bomb, and I would shoot her fully clothed, but very sexy, with rock stars, and she'd interview them. We did like the Village People, Ted Nugent. I did that, and one of her boyfriend's name was Michael Kirk, who ended up being the editor. We became best friends, and being the editor of the music editor of We magazine. So We magazine, which was owned by Playboy, was sold, and it was the same publishers from Sherry. And so he was a musician himself, and thought, let's take this step. Let's go a little further with this. So the concept was, rock stars and half naked women. It was 82, so that it was acceptable back then. So that's what we did.
Yeah.
So we shot Ozzy. I shot him in a church with two women. He was scared shitless. He was like, Sharon was actually watching. I was like, why are you so nervous? He was like, my fiance is watching me. I'm like, all right. And Sharon would be just have fun, but so we would take these pictures, and it was just very stylized. We had Ozzy. I think we had Ozzy in a coffin, and the girls would have like something stabbing them or whatever. Just very theatrical. And so we did that, and we also did Joe Perry. Shot him with my old girlfriend Denise on a motorcycle at my house in Jersey. So we started getting all this attention. Did Rick James. Started getting all this attention, and the bands wanted to be in it. So then Gordon Beidenthal, someone that I knew, who was the publicist for Elektra Records, asked me or I asked her if she had any bands that would, be cool with doing this. And she said, well, I got Motley Crue, that's a new band. And I'm like, all right, let's do it. Let's set it up. And I met them, came to LA with Michael, met them, hung out, got thrown out of the restaurant where we were. We ended up at the Rainbow, and, we became fast friends too. And,
Yeah. I could just stick with Motley Crue forever, but you did see him we'll skip way forward. And again, you and I were together. We're talking about the Atlantic City show. Talk about just coming full circle again. You're back shooting them again all these years later. And what's that like to have, worked with the band for that long, and any special memories you have from those last couple of shows that we've seen at?
All the magazines, I was working with all the magazines at that point. So if I took a photo of Vince against a blue background and a red background, I would sell it to different magazines. So that's how I kind of made my living. So that's why I own my photographs. And then when they needed photos for a tour book, then I'd work a deal out with them. So really we would, for that decade, I was really there like 24/7, I travel on the tour buses with them, got initiated by Nikki by biting me going on the bus. That was the first trip when we were with Ozzy. That was something. When Vince got in trouble, for vehicular manslaughter, he went to jail, and then afterwards, I actually visited him when he was in jail, and we talked about doing a photo shoot when he got out, to let his fans know that he was okay. So we did a photo shoot. We drove around his limo and went to the beach. We went to karate where he introduced me to his friends, and we just did photos, just me and him. So I did things like that. And then whenever they did the videos, like their first video, Too Fast for Love, I was there for that. I was at all the really important things, the Theater of Pain shoot with the Gangsters, they hired me to do that for the tour book. And then Moscow Peace Festival was like the closing of that decade. And then John Corabi came in, and I kind of lost interest, because I loved Vince, as the singer, and the sound was changing. It was getting Seattle, and that wasn't my thing. So the magazines didn't need pictures anymore, so I wouldn't do photo shoots on spec anymore. I would only go if I got hired, and no one was really hiring photographers. And really the bands that I tried to shoot, like Alice in Chains and Nirvana, all those bands, they didn't like what I did, and I couldn't say I did Bon Jovi Slippery and Wet album or Night Songs, or I had to hide that stuff from them, because to them that was like I was shunned for doing that. So it turned eventually, but so I was back to square one again, and then I started shooting like Backstreet Boys, NSYNC. So anyway, my career progressed in different ways through the decades, but I probably lost track of the question.
No, you're doing it. You're talking about how coming all these years, you circle back, and there you are, Motley again.
When Motley came back like decades ago, like 20 years. I forget when they started. When Vince came back, that was like, all right, this is something I want to get involved in again. And I did. I shot the shows and whatnot. We never did like any big elaborate photo shoots like we used to. But I shot the shows, said hi, stayed friendly with them. When they did the residency in Vegas, I did a gallery on the Hard Rock floor where they came in and saw what I was doing. I put all my photos from the 80s. And, and then when they did the stadium tour, I shot the show. And that's it, and just been just keeping up with the times, and I'll shoot them or I'll see them. I'll watch the show and say hi, and keep the ball rolling, see where it goes.
Well, you just made me think of something that I had forgotten, but I'm glad I remembered it. I want to talk about this. Here's a trivia question. There's an iconic picture that you took of Vince way back during, I think it was from the Too Young to Fall in Love video. It has been turned into 2 giant canvases. Who are the only 2 people in the world that have one of those canvases? Both of them signed by Vince himself.
Yeah, right. I did a collaboration with my friend David Banagas. So I had this big canvas, and I was trying to talk my girlfriend Mikkel into, because she's an artist too, to embellish my photographs. And, she's like, okay. So I made this big canvas up, and I had her embellish it. And I brought it to Vince at one of the shows. Were you there at the show, the first one? No, not when I gave it. Right.
I was not at that one.
I gave it to, I had him sign it. I think I had him sign it. And, okay. And I was just going to hang it up, for myself. And then he got sick. He fell off the stage. At Monsters on the Mountain, I think. And he got hurt. And he was laid up, and I'm like, he really liked it when he saw it. He goes, oh, like, I wish I had that or something. So I mailed it to him. I gave it to him. So I gave that to him. So that's in his house. And I remember showing it to you, and you were like, I want one of those, So I made one for you. We became friends. So I made one for you. And I think I wasn't there, but I had one of my assistants come and meet you, and Vince signed it for you. And that was very nice of him. But that's what I'm... Yeah,
oh, it was great. Yeah. Vince and I are the ones that have those 2 posters. And Dana Strum, who was kind enough through you to have me meet Vince, and he signed it, and I got a picture taken with them we're each holding it. Now it's hanging up in my house.
They're not posters, it's awesome. Art. Canvas is they're boxed,
it's
not like it's a poster for $10. This is like a big life size with a lot of detail in it that Mikkel did. Yeah, I want one of those. Damn.
We'll get we're gonna get those pictures put in the show with this. So, God, we could go on and on for this, but I'm gonna two more things. I want to talk about Bon Jovi because in the book, The Decade That Rocked, which I encourage people to get, it's awesome. I have a copy that you've signed for me at the house. You have some early pictures of John Bon Jovi. I want to talk about those, and then I want to talk about you shooting the album cover of Slippery When Wet and that whole trash bag thing that came up. But talk about the John Bon
Okay.
Jovi stuff a little bit.
Well, the first time I knew about Bon Jovi was when they opened up for ZZ Top at the Garden, 1983. I was hired by ZZ Top to shoot the Garden show. Now there's this band that came on before that, and I was like, oh, they're cool. They look like they could be in Circus. They look cool and everything. I never really heard of them until they played the song "Runaway," which I heard on the radio because they played that on a Long Island station, and it sounded familiar. And I was like, oh, well, maybe they got something going on. So anyway, I shot a roll of film, and that was it. Fast forward 2 years, Doc McGee was managing him, who managed Motley Crue, and said, I have this band Bon Jovi that's I want you to do a photo shoot when you come back to LA. I mean, back to New York. They're from Jersey, right where you grew up, with same township pretty much. And I said, yeah, sure. So they came up to my studio in New York. And I remember John saying, it's like, wow, I can't believe I'm shooting with you, Mark. This is cool. And I'm like, yeah, one day you're going to tell me to get that camera out of my face. And so we laughed and we did a really cool photo shoot. We took him on the roof with the Empire State Building. I had a penthouse studio. And that was it. They loved the photos and everything was good. And then I started working with them. They went to Farm Aid, the first Farm Aid. I went with them. And at that point, Fahrenheit came out and they were kind of the new darlings on the block. Like, they were kind of getting a buzz. They didn't have any huge hits. But they were getting a buzz and they were getting in the magazines. And John wanted me there to take photos of Chris Christopherson was there, Willie Nelson, John Cougar. He wanted me to, be the photographer. So I was the photographer for that. And then you get close after you're spending time doing these things, you're shooting them. And then Slippery came around. I mean, I shot him a couple more times for posters when they opened up for 38 Special. Went to fairgrounds. I would do whatever it took to get him in the magazines. That was my job. They would take care of my expenses on travel, and I would take photos and I would submit them to the magazines and get them in there. So it kind of worked out. And then the following year when they did Slippery, they said we doing a cover. So they wanted me to fly to, or they came up with the idea called Wanted. I don't know if it was Wanted or Wanted Dead or Alive, but it was off the song Wanted. And they wanted me to take a picture of them looking like Billy, a gang, Billy the Kid. So they all grew beards. And one at a time, they came to my studio, the same studio that they came to a couple of years before that, or a year before that. And they all came in with a hat, or Alec had a little thin cigar, just cool, like Jesse the Kid, or and they would all have their own photos. And then I put it together, made a Wanted poster, and I thought it looked like it could be a cool cover. But they said they wanted them to be in street clothes, look like rock stars. So I said, well, come up with a concept. They were in Vancouver. I said, well, why don't we find a warehouse in Vancouver or somewhere? I'll do some scouting and find something cool. We'll hang up the posters in the background, and they'll be in the front looking like cool rock stars, in their stuff. And they're kind of hanging out, just chilling out. So that was going to be the cover concept. I got the shot, spent, a week there, hung out, went to the strip clubs, and that's where it got inspired by the next version of the cover. They thought, the record company is like, what are you doing? You don't, you're in a warehouse, you're in a Billy the Kid kind of thing. And, it just changed, it shifted to something else. it didn't go over with management, and then the record company decided to, all right, let's come up with something different. And that's when, I'm not sure if it was Doc or John or Richie, came up with the Slippery When Wet, because there was all these strip clubs where they would go in this plexiglass and they wet them down, the t-shirts, and that's how we got the idea. And then there's a lot of hills in Vancouver, so there's the sign Slippery When Wet, so it all kind of like pieced together. And then when we went back to New Jersey, John had a place, a little apartment at Bradley Beach, I think it was, and we got all the cars together, a motorcycle. Alex had a motorcycle. I think John had a Corvette, or all these different cars posed right alongside the beach, and with all the girlfriends and friends, and they were still missing, like no one had like well endowed breasts, like they would kind of show it off that's what they wanted. So Tico and my friend Danny went to the beach to find some girl with big breasts, came back, put a t-shirt on her and put her like front and center, took the picture. That was going to be like that wasn't really a cover, it was too busy. So then we took it a step further. We just shot Angela, the girl, in my photo studio in New York. Like, we kind of staged the plexiglass and the water dripping and all that. That ended up being the cover. They printed up a couple 100,000 copies. It was ready to go. They put a pink border on it. I don't know why, to match the girl's nails. I mean, that was ridiculous. I wasn't crazy about the cropping. It wasn't my idea. I just turned over the film. And then John saw it in a Xerox in Vancouver. He didn't see that it was a pink back border. He just saw, I said, all right, looks okay. Approved it. That's when they printed them. When he saw the color, he kind of freaked out. Now, at the same time, the PMRC was going on. I was actually at the PMRC with Dee and Frank Zappa and John Denver, documenting that. So that was going on, and sexist album covers would not get, stocked in a lot of these like Walmarts and things like that. So they were like, all right, we can't use this. And John didn't like the pink anyway. So it was a good opportunity for him to come up with something else without like, because he approved the cover. But so that's when we were trying to brainstorm, and no one came up with anything until John called me up and said, I'm coming over, get a black garbage bag, hang it up, and I'll be right over. I'm like, all right. I had no idea what he was going to do. So he came in, and he's like, you have we need some water on here. So I got a water bottle, and I put some oil in it and sprayed it, and it started dripping down. And then he just wrote Slippery When Wet. And I took a Polaroid, and he's like, that's it. I'm leaving. Send it to him. Take a few photos. Done. And that's how the cover came about. 40 almost 40 years
That's awesome.
ago.
Amazing. And we'll, of course, get that iconic photograph up as well. So, like I said, I could talk to you for hours on this, but I want to be respectful of your time. Why don't we conclude, or getting close to concluding, with you being at Ozzy's farewell show with Black Sabbath, and talk about your work with Ozzy over the years, and then you wanted to announce something on a personal level as well.
So Mikkel and I, we started a magazine called Rocked. It's actually, I'll show you. This is the very first issue. Okay. So the Monsters of Rock cruise they were all these bands that were performing on it, and I used to do these book signings, or I still do, but my books are 6 pounds, and I can only get like 100 on board. So people wanted more stuff from me, but I couldn't get more. So these don't weigh that much, and I figured, why don't we do like a magazine, kind of Rocked, it's called, and just pick all pictures from there, like, and do like just a really quick little easy pinup thing with a little bit about the band, for people that don't know who they are. We did a centerfold. Ace was on the ship. Yeah.
Ace.
Just old school stuff. Here's Rudy. So there's a picture of the band and that. So it's like kind of a retro thing, nothing fancy or anything, but something about the Monsters of Rock. All the bands are accessible. They walk around on the ship. They do signings. They take pictures with you. It's such a great experience. So Mikkel, 2 weeks before the ship sailed, I told her the idea, and she's like, I'll give it a try. And she did it in like 3 days, and we printed it locally. So then a year goes by, and we do it again. We make it more like a Circus magazine or Hit Parader. This time we did a dual cover kind of thing. And again, it's just also stuff. We came up with this. Quotes. They're talking about me. They're kind of like mini versions of me, of my Decade That Rock book. But a little bit different. And she came up with this little rock your brain, some fun stuff. And so that was the second issue. And then she's like, if we're going to do this again, I'm going to need more time, and we need to plan it out, and it's going to cost money for production and printing, because we just kind of broke even, and we're going to spend all this time doing it. We're here to make a profit, and for the product that we produce, and which I believe people want. I don't have it in me to do another book. That took me 5 years. I will be doing other books, but right now I just want quick fixes, because that's what makes me happy, seeing my photos in the magazine with my picture. And now I have a magazine with all my photos in it. So we decided to do a Kickstarter campaign, and we were going to put David Lee Roth on the cover and Ozzy on the fourth cover. So if we reach our goal, we'll have these magazines produced by our date that we put on there, which was November. So we did a kind of a mock cover. This is the David Lee Roth. We started doing layouts, so it's more layout oriented, not pin-up-y. So it's like I tell my story, showing the laminates, letters from the band when they wanted me to go out on the road. Just again like kind of like the Decade That Rock. This time we had Sebastian Bach as a centerfold, and we have pinups too. Chris Holmes. So that's that. So then we decided, when I got asked to shoot the Back to the Beginning concert, I said, Mikkel, let's do one on Ozzy and all the bands that are playing, and we came up with a tagline where past is present. On the front cover, we'll put the past photos. And so what we did in this case, Guns N' Roses was playing, Metallica, Pantera, Anthrax, Slayer. So this is the cover we did. Okay. So we have all the artists that were performing. Awesome. And this is just a mock cover. So when I went to the show, I could, the Kickstarter already started like a month in, but I wasn't really promoting it. I was going to start promoting it with this, I was going to try to get Ozzy to hold it, and it was really going to kick in. I had a whole month to promote it and make the goal. So I went there, I took the pictures, everything was great. It was amazing. Actually, this photo that's on the cover ended up in the museum. There's only 3 photos in this museum, the Working Class Hero. 2 of mine and 1 of Paul Natkins, the one with Randy and Ozzy, the black and white where he's holding him. That's, so that and my 2 photos from '81, my first time I shot Ozzy live, were these big photos with my name on it in this beautiful museum, and everything else had his awards and Grammys or whatever he had. So that was cool, and I thought if I can get Ozzy to hold this, that would be great publicity and promotion, and I'll definitely be able to get the Kickstarter with money, so I can make this magazine. So we got the photo with Ozzy holding it like a week after when he did the signing, and Sharon approved it, and then like 2 or 3 days later, sadly, he passed. So it kind of put a squash on everything. I mean, it's just devastating still to this day, and I couldn't promote something, especially with it just wouldn't be right. I didn't feel like doing it, and I thought that, all right, there goes my Kickstarter, and the idea of having this magazine. But let a couple of weeks go by, and then I started saying, Ozzy held that for a reason, and it's like Ozzy really gave me a lot of confidence when I was a kid shooting in the studio and backstage and all that. They took me under their wing, and I know he would want me to continue and do everything. So I did whatever I could do to make the goal. A couple weeks after, I didn't use that photo. I still don't feel it's like the right time yet, because it is like probably one of the last photos of him, and it just, I didn't want to use it for that. I want to use it more for, I don't know, when the time's right. But we made the goal, and we're going to be putting out the magazine. So we're going to have all the bands that played on the other side, and so up until the centerfold is going to be all present photos, and on the front to the centerfold is going to be all the other photos from the past of the same band. So that's kind of the concept of the magazine. We don't know where it's going to go from here. They might do one shots and this and that. So, but one of the things, like, people ask me, did you talk to Ozzy? You know, because he was seeing people back there, and the day before there was rehearsals, I saw Sharon, gave her a hug, saw Rudy, and all the bands. I got a lot of the bands to hold the magazine, and it was great. Then as the night's going on, I'm looking at my skin and I'm seeing these like rashes, like round circles, and like I was like freaking out, and then by the end of the night, like I was like, covered with them. I mean, I couldn't believe it. So I was like, I didn't know what it was. I was like, I got to just leave. I got to stay away from people. I'm thinking, like, I hugged Sharon. Oh, what did I give her? You know what I mean? And then she gives it to Ozzy. This is what my anxiety's kicking in. So I go back after rehearsals, once I noticed it, I stayed away from everybody, rolled my sleeves down. It was hot. I rolled my sleeves down and went back to my room, and I took my pants off, and my legs were fully red. Like, I looked like a one big rash. Like, my whole body was like weird things I never saw. I'm like, I called my daughter up. What should I do? She's like, well, first of all, I called my doctor. I was diagnosed with bladder cancer 2 years ago. And it's been hills and valleys for the last 2 years. I'm not going to say everything's great. But at first they wanted to take my bladder out, and I saw another doctor, and, it ended up I was okay, and I was on chemo locally. And thankfully I didn't have any side effects, and I felt great. I ended up taking care of myself. I didn't eat processed food. I stopped red meat. I stopped sugar and alcohol and anything that could possibly not, that could help this cancer that I had, because, you just get it. You just freak out. You think you're going to die. And you want to do anything possible that could be a reason why you have it. So I did that. It put me in good shape. Still always felt good. And then when I went to when I called the doctor up, I was doing some research. I said, could that skin thing have something to do with the chemo, And he's like, no, it's nothing, not related, and all that. And I'm like, well, what is it? So anyway, the next day was the concert. Mikkel, my girlfriend, was flying in that morning, and I'm like, oh, am I going to give it to her? Am I going to be contagious? By the morning, it did go away. I don't know what happened. It just went away. I actually went out that night to try to get cortisone for an hour and a half after, and I couldn't find any, but it just went away, and I still didn't know what it was. So that day, I just stayed in the photo pit. I didn't want to touch anyone. I didn't want to hug anyone. I didn't want to do anything. The last thing I wanted to do was see Ozzy, and God forbid, give him something, because I still didn't know what it was. I had no clue. I was thinking that it could be from the chemo, but I didn't know for sure. The doctor said probably not. It could be something you ate, which it could have been. So unfortunately, I didn't get to say my last goodbyes to him and thank him for everything, and personally show him the magazine. I had his assistant actually show him the magazine and pose for it like a week later. So it's kind of a regret, but it's nothing, what are you going to do? You don't want to get people, if you're sick, you can't be selfish and expose someone to something that, so I was just being very cautious. And but yeah, it's just very sad, sad for Amy, Jack, and Kelly, and Sharon, and everyone that was around him. Yeah.
What do you, Mark, with all you've shared today, your successes and everything, this is my final question for you, and then I want you to promote all your stuff real quickly for everybody so they can check you out more. But listening to you today, you've had some extreme highs. You've definitely had some lows in there. With respect to health, what's a message that you would give our listeners with taking care of themselves and doing things right to avoid cancer, overdose, some of these things? What do you say to that?
Well, definitely just say no to drugs. That's obvious. If you're going to have a drink, then be moderate about it, obviously. I was never one that abused anything. I mean, I dabbled in everything, but I just used it recreational. Not anymore. You know, you get older, you got to, think a little clearer, and you want to last as long as you can. You know, I'm 66, and I have a lot to do. I have 2 new grandchildren and a lot of living to do. So you want to do anything you can. You got to do what you can do. I know we've had some talks about going vegan. I mean, that's not for me, but I can eat more vegetables and fruit. I feel that's really important. I see my grandson Jackson, and he's eating some things that probably shouldn't be eating, the process that I'm trying to step in a little bit and have some influence on what his diet's going to be while he can be saved, basically. Drinking more water. I never drank water. My parents never said drink water. Like, I never knew that you're supposed to. It's like, all right, it doesn't taste like anything. Why would anyone want to drink it? I'll drink some soda or apple juice or something, orange juice, but water is the best thing for your body. And I learned that probably only 5 years ago, really. I didn't know the body craves it, and especially now, I know that even more so, that it's important to wake up and drink some water, not just wait until the afternoon, and not to guzzle water. I'm learning stuff every day and with ChatGPT and things, like, it helps you out a little bit. You kind of believe them. So that's my new best friend.
Where can people get a hold of you? Where do you want them to go?
Well, the easiest thing is goes to markweiss.com. It will lead you to everything else. Like, you'll see a click to go to rockmag.com if you want to purchase a magazine or a book, The Decade That Rocked. But if you go to markweiss.com, that's the easiest thing. And my social is Mark Weiss, Mark Weiss Guy on my social. And my social for Rocked is Rock Mag. I encourage people to go there because we're just starting out. And, we want followers and people to share and all that. But one of the things I'm doing with Rock Magazine, one of the things I'm doing is I want to establish this site. The magazine is all my photos. That's something I always wanted, and I think we're going to stick with that for now. But the site will be designed eventually after we get these magazines out, and I can get Mikkel to do the website, because she does the website as well, and it's a lot of work, is to create pages for photographers, journalists, creative people that like to go to shows, want to review shows, want to interview bands, want to photograph bands, rock bands, got to be rock, it's called Rocked, and create a platform for John Smith. So if John Smith is in Ohio and wants try to get access, you gotta show me you can do it first. You gotta have a little chutzpah to get yourself in there through a local radio station. You gotta get your own photo passes in the beginning, or sneak in like I did to get the shots to show me that you're worthy. I'm just gonna not hand you. I've done that before, where I just handed photo passes to people, and they take it for granted. It's not, they don't take it like to heart, and they don't work for it. So I learned that that's not the best thing to do. Best thing to do is, like, get yourself in, figure it out. I'll tell them what to do. Go to a radio station or a local paper and get yourself in there. Tell them you'll do it for free. You just want your name in there and use the access. That's what I did eventually before I got into Circus. And then once you got that platform, you got a place locally, and it's usually easier outside of I picked a place where it's the hardest to get a photo pass, New York City, But in these little towns where these bands are going and they're looking to promote, start a social media, build up your social media, because that's the first thing these publicists are going to look at is, like, how many followers you have, or let me see your photos. But if I create a platform that I've already created, that I get the respect from the publicists and managers, and said, they're saying, well, I'm working for Rock Magazine. I have my own platform there, and it says John Smith's Rock Scene. They get a gallery and they can show it off along with other photographers and journalists. So it's something that I've been wanting to do, and I feel like after these 2 magazines are put out from the Kickstarter, Mikkel and I will be able to focus on trying to make that happen, and then have a place where you send the photos and just create this thing. Because in 10 years, we just got a house in Florida and we're hanging by the beach and it's nice there. I like to be just hanging by the beach with the laptop, seeing John Smith's photographs of whoever, and not just bands that I shot. I want them to look for the new bands like Youngblood. You find whoever's out there, shoot Youngblood, because he's the up and coming. He's the guy that's gonna he's the one that is carrying the torch for Ozzy for sure, and rock and roll. What I think anyway.
Big time.
Seeing these performances at the Palladium that someone just sent me, and he's going to be playing New York. I mean, this kid's. I met him several years ago at when Ozzy released the album. Maybe Five Goblins. Ozzy Osbourne. That was a movie.
Was it Personality number 9?
Anyway, he had a
I don't
record
know.
release, and he was there, and that's when I first saw him, and I was like, this kid's got something. And this is before anything happened. Wow. He's exploded overseas, but now he's exploding in the States here. And one of the reasons is because of the performance he did in Birmingham. But he's a rock star, but he's so true to what he's doing. I mean, you can't keep your eyes off him. He's like every rock star you could think of, Johnny Rotten, Ozzy, Freddie Mercury. I mean, he's Mick Jagger. He's like all mashed up into one. So all us older people have been waiting for someone to put something together that can really appeal to the mass audiences, where the record companies will notice, or the fans, more importantly, will notice, and they'll start signing bands like that. And that's how this next decade's going to happen. Might take a few years, but maybe not. These days it happens overnight sometimes. So we need some more young bloods out there. We need a full band. We need to carry the torch. So I'm mentoring. You just gotta go to Get Rocked. Get rocked at Rockmag. Get at rockmag.com. I think that's the email that we use, but it's on the website. You can just go on the website at markweiss.com. That will get you to Rockmag, and then there'll be an email. Send a note, sign up on the mailing list or whatever, and we'll read it and we'll see what's happening. Send me what you got. Let me know what your story is, and just be patient. And be a squeaky wheel, I always say. Squeaky wheel gets the oil. If for some reason I don't get back to you, or someone in my office doesn't get back to you, make sure I see it. Maybe I didn't see it. Maybe it went in my junk mail. So make sure, whoever, goes with anything. You want to get an answer for someone. If someone doesn't respond, you just take it for granted that they didn't see it. Now, if they say, hey, I saw your emails 10 times, leave me alone, then to back off. But, then you write a note, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't think it might have been in the junk mail. I mean, there's a way to get out of that, and then give it some space. So you got to get through to the right people. I'm just giving you some advice that worked for me and still does.
It's funny. Like I said, it's been great having you on here. I'm proud to call you a friend, and a lot of the drive you have, I have that same type of drive. I talked about it. I saw your pictures. I contacted you. Here you are. I know we're talking about trying to do a couple things out. I don't want to talk about it on camera because I want it to be a done deal before we do it. But it's that never giving up, keep working at your craft, and create the opportunity and be respectful along the way, and things seem to work out, right? And that's how it goes.
You're a perfect example of that. I mean, it's mine's a story of success in business. Yours is a success story in personal and business and everything. So I admire you and what you're doing. And even talking to people like me and Rudy, I saw Rudy's interview. I mean, it's people want to talk to you because you've been through something that's, no one should have gone through. But what you've done is unbelievable, obviously. I mean, you look at some of your videos, and and when I went there to photograph you, I not only photographed you in your basement, like got some cool rock photos, but you had me go into the meetings, and which I was inspired by, and saw the group of people that you had there and how they respected you and respected each other and each other, which probably before they came to you didn't. So you got one up on me on that, because I only make people feel good if I make them look good in a photo. I mean, I'm not, I might have a little bit more than that, but you changed lives.
I appreciate that, Mark, and I'm looking forward to what's coming in the future with us. I'll see you soon. We're going to talk after this on some other things, but thank you very much for being on this show today.
All right,
I really
thanks, Todd.
appreciate it.
Appreciate it.